Welcome. My name is Kelly Riordan. I'm a classical musician turned creative entrepreneur, and this is the best platform for musicians that are looking to shape their career by thinking outside the box.
Hi, Julia. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited about this, and I've been looking forward to this episode since we met at NAMM about a month and a half ago. Oh my goodness, time flies.
Something like that. Yeah. It's so good to be here. I have to say, when you introduced yourself to me and gave me your card, we started following each other in social media, and I was like, oh, she does podcast stuff too? So I checked out your podcast, and I've been seeing your media content, your social media content, and I was like, this girl is doing some awesome stuff. I'm so
Oh my
excited
gosh,
to get to
thank
be
you.
here and to talk to you. And like, you're encouraging music makers, but also music educators. And our industry crumbles if we don't have good educators. So thank you for what you're
Yes.
doing and
Oh, I
empowering and
appreciate that.
encouraging the future musicians that are going to be looked up to. I'm a fan of you. So thank you for having me here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Likewise. This is going to be a ton of fun. Like I said, I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to it. And kind of a backstory, I guess, for anyone that's listening. I met Julia at NAMM, and I
Mhm.
got to sit in on a session that she did with her other team members for the Women of NAMM ReVoicing the Future podcast. And it was such a cool session because we're talking about not only like goal setting, but also building your ladder and your values, and how you can kind of make an impact on the industry, but stay true to you personally. And it was a really great session. I walked away with so many notes. I was obsessed with it. It was great. So I wanted to make sure we had at least one of you on the podcast so we could kind of explore and kind of dive into that. But
Yeah.
I want to jump backwards a lot in your career journey before we get too far ahead of
Yes.
ourselves, because I could definitely start there right away easily. Uh, I mentioned before we recorded, I was reading your bio on your website again this morning, and you have this really sweet story about how you got started. Tell me a little bit about your early music days and your early music education when you were a kid.
Yeah. Um, So I do have this on my bio that as soon as I was tall enough to like hit the piano keys, I was like, "Oh, this is fun. Like I can make one of these notes sound cool next to another one of these notes and I can sing along with it." And so I was plunking notes and then just kind of creating these melodies, singing at the same time. And my parents actually had a rule that we had to do piano lessons. And
Mm.
so I guess I had to learn piano. And at the time, I did not like it. I wanted to just sit there and make my songs. I didn't want to have to go through all of these lessons. And in school, I actually found the value of it. Like, this is actually important to
Mm.
know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and the reasons why these things sound good and maybe these things don't sound so good. So, yeah, I love piano. And so I started playing music because I loved it and I was encouraged in that. And I would say anybody who has something that you're interested in, like explore that musical interest, like explore ways that you can incorporate that passion and that interest into what you're doing, even for people who are outside the industry. I think it's important to try and monetize on your passions. And
Yeah.
especially in our musical industry, like how can we find ways to monetize the things that we are naturally gifted in and then move past the natural gifting into like the technical aspects, which comes in lessons.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So after high school, I started actually studying music in college and then initially thought I was going to be a singer.
Mm.
And through classes and music theory, was really encouraged to study production as well. And I am so grateful for that encouragement because it took me from understanding how to hold a mic to how to hit record and understand what all is happening and what to do, what not to do. And so through the process of school and university studying, now I'm able to sing, but I'm also able to write, record, produce, compose, mix, master, all of those different skills that you need to know, like sort of like what is this person doing?
Mm.
And then how does me singing in the microphone affect that? And then how does this role affect the final product? Now I can function in each of those roles, but not necessarily have to, which was a goal I had and didn't even necessarily know it until I was talking with professors and mentors and people who knew a lot more than I did. And they were like, it doesn't sound like you just want to sing. It sounds like you want to
Mm,
understand the technical side too. And I'm
that makes a
so
lot of sense.
thankful they encouraged me in that. I'm so thankful.
But I think
Yeah.
it's hard too because when you are heading down that performance path, it seems like from others in the industry that you have to just really focus on that one thing. You need to be so skilled and so um, dedicated to only performance. Otherwise, you're never going to make it, right? It's kind of the industry lingo that we all use. Like
Yeah.
making it is so important, and making a name for yourself is what we're all looking for. And that
Mm-hmm.
success is this like ever elusive, ever moving end line in front of us. So having someone actually stand up and say, hey, this is not the only thing you like. It's okay to explore the things, I think is maybe unique in a mentor, because when we're in the music
Yeah.
industry, a lot of the advice tends to be run in one direction and one direction only. Do you feel that way too?
I feel like it's easy to answer just the question that's being asked instead of think
Yeah.
of why. You want to
Mm,
sing. Okay, awesome. Why? Because I love making music. Okay, so do you just like to sing or do you also like making music? What parts of
mm,
music do you enjoy making? Oh, you like the process of sitting down and thinking about, hey, when I hit these two piano notes, I actually enjoy hearing the harmonic content around it. Well, that's not just singing, is it? No, that's actually composing. That's performance. That's sort of understanding the sonic environment that you're hearing. Have you thought about sound design? Have you thought about these other things? And so music is
mm.
not linear. It's wide, it's vast. There's so many job opportunities, but there's ways of exploring your interests that maybe just because you want to learn something as a hobby doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't detract from your career. It just opens up your mind to understanding what other people are doing that are maybe supporting what you do and you have no idea what their job is. And now because you had
Right.
this little interest, you're able to explore that and understand what other people are bringing to the industry and really respect that.
Absolutely. And there's so many things in the industry that feed into and so many aspects and jobs that go into actually creating the music that we hear and that we listen to on a daily basis,
Yeah.
or even little sounds on your phone or when you get in your car and there's little noises
Yeah.
that go along with that. There's so much sound design there, and things that we just take for granted, or you don't necessarily know that there was that much effort and energy and so many people and moving parts that had
Yeah.
to impact that final result or final product. It
Yeah.
is hard to comprehend, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And people are getting paid to do those things. And
Mhm.
oftentimes it's because they found it something interesting, they studied it, they learned about it, and they said, I want to get paid to do this because this is fun. And I'm a huge
Yeah,
advocate of having a job that you find fun. I think that's really important, or
definitely.
finding a way to make that job fun while you have it.
Absolutely. So when you were in high school and trying to figure out where life goes next, and you were
Yeah.
thinking at the time you wanted to be a singer, I think,
Hmm.
right? Not so much into the production side yet. What at what point did you know that you wanted this to be a career? And as you were thinking about that process, how were you deciding next steps, where you wanted to end up, where you wanted to study, and what life is going to look like after high school?
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to back up a little bit. In elementary school,
Yeah.
that's when I was really like, I love singing. I I always want to sing.
Mm.
That's what I love doing. I'm going to be a singer. And I think there are probably people that were like, "Oh, that's great. Like you want to be a singer. They want to be an astronaut. This person wants to be a doctor. Like that's great." And I was like, no, I'm gonna be a singer." And then as I grew older, was like, I'm actually writing songs. Like, this
Mm.
isn't just me singing, I'm writing songs. I'm a songwriter. So then I kind of took on that title. And then I was taking choir. And then in college, my first few years, I really just explored as many music classes as I could. I was like, I have how many credits? Okay. I have like this hour free. I'm going to try taking this class. I have this hour free. I'm going to try taking this class, and discovered things that I liked, things I didn't like, things that were really hard, things that were really easy, things that I just were bored about, things that were really interesting. And I just discovered. And I think if possible, like take time to discover what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. And sometimes those not enjoying things are just, you're just going to have to find a way to make that happen. Like you don't like math, but you're probably going to have to understand like how to do math because it's a part of life. But yeah, so I just discovered my first few years of school. And then there was a point where I talked to my professor and he was like, I really think you would be a successful producer. And to me, I was like, wow, like, and it wasn't out of, it wasn't like, you'll be a good producer. It was like, you will be a successful producer. And to me, that was like a nod of, like, you are able to do this. I see potential in you. You have the foundational understanding and you can build off of this, and you have the character to sustain you in this career. And that was huge, that even early on, somebody believed in me and saw the potential in me for success. And that in turn, like, made me say, like, well, if you believe in me, I can believe in me. And I've always been very outgoing and very tenacious, but at some point to have somebody say that to you is a big deal. And I think sometimes people just, they need to be reminded of that. They need to be reminded, like, there is potential in you, there is greatness in you, and you know, you're a few steps away from where you want to be, and your hard work is going to pay off. And it's not just wishful thinking, it's hard work. It's taking those classes, it's staying up and doing what you got to do to finish that project. It's networking, it's all of those things, but at the end of the day, you have to be willing to put in the work, and you have to be willing to say, like, this is what I want to do, and I'm willing to put in the time and effort to make it happen. So him saying, like, I think you'd be a successful producer was a pretty big career shift in my life. And then I started studying production and saw how transferable the skills of songwriting were, because
Oh,
songwriting
sure.
and production have a lot in common. And a lot of songwriters, singer songwriters, I should say, that I've been listening to for years are now saying, hey, I'm coming out with this next song, and it's the first song I've produced by myself. And they've been signed for a decade. Like, they've been making music for a long time, but this is the first one they've produced, because it's starting to become common knowledge, I think. So when I'm putting chords together to mix with a melody, and I'm thinking, you know, what is my main melody in the chorus going to be? What is my intro going to be? How do these things come together? How does this convey this thought, idea, or emotion to my listener? A lot of those things are what you do in production. So instead of saying, instead of this chord being at the piano, maybe I move this into like a string quartet for this section. Okay, well, I can take these notes and place them there, and it's very similar. Or maybe instead of this low note going like boom, 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 maybe I'm just going to make a beat instead and have it make a completely different sound, completely different emotion from that. And you try things out. And I have found a lot of joy in production, but I'm thinking like a songwriter a lot of those times. Like, does this make sense? How does this convey this emotion? Am I being clear in my word choice? But it's very similar. I think it's a very similar way of thinking, songwriting and producing. And I think a lot of producers are also songwriters, and songwriters are also producers, although they may function in just one of those roles at a time. And so I think there are a lot of transferable skills. And that's something that I've learned in my career, is how to take something that you understand and know well and transfer that skill and that tool into another area. So in school, I studied recording engineering. And because I know how to record, I know how to edit vocals, I also know how to edit podcasts. I am using the same tools. It's a very similar workflow, but instead of singing, like a vocal track, I'm doing dialogue and I'm editing the dialogue. And so if you can take those skills, say, I know how to do this, what other area in the industry does this thing, like, is this being used? I think that is really important. And I don't hear that talked about very much. But I think if you can be good at that and you can continuously build more skills for yourself, you can be very versatile and you can move across different roles and you can have a lot of fun with it too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and it's something that I think in school, again, if you get so hyper fixated or so hyper focused that it's only going to be performance or it's only
Mm-hmm.
going to be education or it's only going to be, musicology, whatever you are studying in general,
Mm-hmm.
you do miss those opportunities to take other classes
Yeah.
and to learn other parts of the industry or experiment a little bit more. And if you feel really strongly that you want to stay in one lane, of course, that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also good to give that kind of blanket permission that when you're in school and you've got a whole team of mentors supporting you, that is the time to be experimenting. That is the time to be trying new things and learning new things and talking to other professors and taking other classes and seeing what else is out there. Because then you go to, let's say, an industry conference or show like NAM,
Yeah.
and there's tens and tens of thousands of people that represent jobs that you probably weren't even aware existed because
Yeah.
everyone kind of puts the blinders on and stays in their lane. And there's so many other things in the industry that are needed. And the more skills you have, obviously, it's easier to stay in the industry because you are a little bit more marketable.
Yeah. I mean, I think professors are often a very underutilized resource for students. I
Hmm.
was talking to students at NAM, and one of the students said they were having some difficulty with the music software. And I looked at them and said,
Hmm.
"Did you go to the booth and talk to a rep?" And they said, "Oh no, I didn't do that." I said, "Go back to the booth, ask them your question and say the magic words. I'm a student." Literally, those are
Yes.
magic words because
Yep.
if you are a music company, you want to help those music students so they are loyal to your brand, so that they continue to use your product, so that they see the value and that they have training in that product and it's easier for them to use, right? Just from a
Absolutely.
business perspective, it makes business sense to help students, right? And so they went
Yes.
back and they're like, "Oh yeah, I got a card." And so I was like, "Okay, here's what you do. You take a picture of that business card and you email them back and you say, 'Hi, my name is so and so. We talked at NAM and thank you for answering my question. Also, could you help with, XYZ, whatever.'" And that is powerful. Even if you're not a student or a recent graduate or you're transitioning careers into music, that is powerful. Just ask your question. Talk to somebody who works at that company, talk to somebody who knows more than you do and be willing to ask your question. Cuz a lot of people just like, I'll Google search it. Okay, like go ahead, but you have resources available to you. And if you're a
Right.
student, your professors get paid to answer your questions. They get paid to give you information. That is what they are paid to do. So ask your question, even if it's like class adjacent. Like
Hmm.
it's kind of in the curriculum, but maybe not really. Ask it anyway. Worst case scenario, they're like, I don't know. Lit- if that's the worst case scenario, like why? Why not
Right.
ask your professor? So
And
I'm a
you're not
huge
going to
fan
get
of that.
judged for asking the questions. You're going to get
Yes.
asked for guessing and guessing incorrectly when you could have
Yeah.
asked for support. That's something I think I wish I'd figured out a little bit earlier, is that there
Mhm.
is less pride in doing it yourself than there is in actually having a team and leveraging that support. And other people want to help you, other people want to see
Mhm.
musicians succeed. We're in this very niche, also very passionate industry where everyone is really excited for the most part about what they're doing, and they want to help everybody else in the industry as a result.
Yeah. I mean, if you have the answer, why would you hold on to it when you can be encouraging somebody else when you have that answer? And I hear people in the pro audio community talk about this. They'll say, yeah, they'll have their templates available. And they say, like, it's not the magic of what I do. I heard this from somebody. I cannot remember who, but they said something like, the magic of what I do is not in my template or my pedal board or whatever. That's not the magic of what I do. The magic of what I do is in who I am and what I'm able to do
Mm.
with the tools that I have. And I just thought, what a beautiful thing. Because some people are very private about like the tools that they use and kind of the way they go about things. But when we as a community are able to share the skills that we have and then share the information we have, we better each other. Because if you share what you know, I'm going to hear something I don't know. And if I share what I know, you're going to hear something you don't know. And at the end of the day, both of us are better. And then when we go into the next conversation, you talk to somebody who doesn't know that, they encourage you. And then it's even like we grow as a community. We get better. Our music gets better. Our students get better. Like there's only positive things. But it does encourage you, like you have to be humble about that. You can't be like,
Mm-hmm.
I know everything, because we don't. We don't know everything. We have so much to learn.
It's true. And the industry is so gigantic that
Mm-hmm.
it is impossible for one person to know all, especially when we talk, obviously we can talk about the singing and songwriting and composition and the production and the engineering, which you can do and you absolutely are doing yourself. You have singles out that you have done everything from front to back on that work.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, when it comes to marketing and branding and artist relations and getting gigs, there are still going to be people who have more expertise in that. And
Yep.
that's where you might need support. So even if you feel like you can do a lot of things independently, it's good to be networking and meeting other people who might have other tips and tricks that not only you can learn from, but have skills that you don't have, or maybe that you also just don't care to learn. Like if you don't want to design a website, make friends with a web designer fast so you can
Yeah.
get some support there. That's really important. I know we're talking a lot about these very big, heady ideas of relating with
Mm-hmm.
people in the industry and asking for help. But I want to back up a little bit. Post college, in your career journey, what came next? Where were you focused? I mean, in what directions were you trying to run, and where were you finding support and mentorship along the way?
Yeah. So after I graduated university, I was really just, I put myself in a place to say yes as much as I could, and realizing that saying yes to something means you're saying no to something. That's something that's incredibly important to
Mm.
really think about. And so I was trying to meet other people who also had the same passion I did for music. And so I would go to shows like NAMM and different music conferences. And I love talking to people. I'm very extroverted. So for me, those conferences are just fun. Like I get to go here for work, but really I just get to talk to people about music, and everyone here loves music, and this is fun. So for me, I'm like, this is vacation. This is great. I love it. But I understand not everybody's that way. I've learned not everybody is like that. But for me it's fun.
They're so much fun. I feel the same way. It's like totally invigorating. You come home exhausted, of course, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you just sucked in so much new information and met so many people, and
Yeah.
it's so exciting every time. So it
Yeah.
is like a highlight every single year to have those experiences.
Yeah. So post graduation, I went to NAMM, and the day before the Thursday show started, there was a women's event. And so it was basically for women who were a part of NAMM. And I was like, that sounds fun. There's a whole event for just women? What? And I had gone to NAMM before, and I knew that there are very few women at NAMM. And so I was excited to just get to be in a room full of other ladies, because I had never experienced that in a music setting. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is going to be awesome. So I get there and I'm like, okay. Realize I'm like, I don't know anybody in this room. Okay. And then I see this group of ladies towards the front of the area. And I just like have this feeling. I was like, I just know I need to meet these people. I know I need to introduce myself. They looked about my age, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. So I walk up to them like, hi, I'm Julia. What's your name? Like, I'm a recording engineer and singer-songwriter. And so I meet these ladies, and they're so fun and so cool. And we swap business cards. And one of them was Steph, who introduced me to Natalie. And so now I'm about 2 years ago, they asked me to join the podcast team. And so that's how I met you, was through that panel with the three of us girls, me, Steph, and Nat. We're a part of the Revoicing the Future Women of NAM podcast. And that's because I walked up to them and was like, "Hi, I'm Julia." And I took that step. And so I think a lot of times when you're just graduated, a big thing is you just have to take that first step. You just have to be willing to be uncomfortable for a minute and put yourself out there and know that you're going to be okay. Like, worst case scenario, you embarrass yourself. Is that the worst thing in the world? Probably not. Best case
Especially
scenario,
because
you meet a
they
great
won't
friend.
remember.
They're not going to remember. They're not. No, with everyone that you talk to at NAM, they're not going to remember. But
Absolutely.
Nat and Steph have become great friends to me, like great women in the industry that I enjoy talking with. And beyond work colleagues, we call each other friends, which is really great to have in the industry, just actual friends that we celebrate each other's successes and we sympathize when we're having a hard time, and we encourage each other to do our very best, and we produce excellent content. So because you take that first step, great things can happen. Like, there's power
Absolutely.
in the willingness to just go and to do the thing.
And I think maybe we talk introvert, extrovert. This might be a little
Yes.
easier for extroverts sometimes to put yourself in the room and to shake the right hands and
Yes.
to meet the right people and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the portion of the population that maybe isn't as excited about that or
Yeah.
isn't as comfortable, what are some ways that you've built more tolerance around this, or kind of practiced the networking a little bit? How
Mhm.
has this continued to improve for you over the course of your career?
I think being really comfortable with who you are is the first step, because it's hard to introduce yourself if you don't really know who you are. And it's hard to explain what you do when you don't know what you're good at. And so I think taking that time to reflect in your introverted way, I think everybody needs to have some introverted time, regardless of how they present to society, whether they are extroverted or introverted. Everybody needs time for solitude and really process, what are the things that I'm really good at? What are things I need to get better at? And where do I want my career to go? And a lot of these things we ended up talking about in that NAM panel for our Revoicing the Future talk this past year. But I think it's really important to understand those things about yourself. So when you're talking with people that you may work with or people that you want to connect with, you have a solid foundation of who I am, what I'm about, what are my values, what are things that I'm encouraged by, what are things that I bring to the table, and just start off there. And those things may not come up in that conversation at all. It might be like, "Oh, cool, what's this new product? Cool, can you tell me about it? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know this thing was yada 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 yada," so on and so forth. But being confident in who you are is visible. You can look at a room and see the people that are comfortable with who they are and the people who are not comfortable with who they are. And so I think part of it is really just taking an inventory and saying I am important, I am valuable, the work I contribute is important. Yes, we all have work that we can do in our own lives, and none of us are perfect by any means. But that doesn't mean that what you bring to the table isn't important and isn't valuable. And so when you start there, you set yourself up for success, and you know that when you are bringing something to the workplace, you're bringing value. And you can expect the people that you're working with to see that. And if they don't, either you need to spend more time there or you need to get out and find another team. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I think it's important too when you're doing this networking, if what you are currently doing is not where you want to be, it's
Mhm.
also okay to share where you're trying to go. You don't just have to share where
Yes.
you are now. So telling
Yes.
people what opportunities you're looking for, what you want to be doing, and I'm sure in your career and obviously in the show notes, everything will link Julia's bio and her information, but you're working with artists and you're doing the
Mhm.
vocal production, and we can talk about Jeremy Rosado and what that process looks like, which is so cool. But you're doing all this engineering and producing, but that doesn't happen initially. It's not like your first job out of college always is exactly where you want to end up, but you find those opportunities by talking about where you're trying to go and the opportunities that you want to be finding, because
Mhm.
you never know when you're going to run across the right person who can make the next introduction or get you in the room with the right people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think something that I've really been processing is that it's human nature for you to naturally gravitate to certain people. And
Mm.
so those people oftentimes are easier for you to work with and are easier to hold a conversation and just vibe with, right? There are other people that take more effort and time to vibe with. And that's totally like on a person to person basis, right? Just personalities, ways that you go about things. Take those people may take a little bit more effort for you to get along with or to communicate with, and just have to think through things a bit more, right? And so within that scope, there will be doors open to you that are like, hey, we want you here. You are welcome here. Like, sit in on this session, come hang, whatever. And then there will be doors closed to you, places that you are not welcome, places that you are maybe not wanted, people that don't want to work with you. And that's okay. It's okay for not everybody to want to work with you. It's okay to not be everybody's jam. That is human nature. That is the state of humanity. Not everybody is going to like everybody, even if you are likable, even if you are kind and compassionate and are always working on getting better. There will just be some people that don't vibe with you, and that's okay. That just means you need to walk in the areas that are open for you and be okay with the doors that are closed to you, and not try to force open a door that doesn't welcome you. Like, why would you want to be somewhere where you're not wanted when there are places that are going to welcome you with open arms? And I've had a mentor specifically tell me, like, go with where you are wanted and the doors that are open to you, and those will be your people. And then start to work with those people and build things with those people who are wanting to support you and encourage you. Because there's always going to be people that will say one thing like, oh, yes, I'm always here for you, but like won't get back to you at all. So believe their actions, not just their words. And within this, believe actions. Believe what people show you, not just what they tell you. Walk in the way that's welcoming towards you, and don't worry about the doors that have been shut to you, because you want to be where you're
Awesome.
welcomed, not where you're trying to pry open that opportunity that is for someone else.
Yeah. And when we're talking about doors open too, I think part of this is
Mhm.
also noticing those doors.
Yeah.
Okay. In your case, this was being more focused on singing and then having a mentor say, hey, but what about production? You would actually be a really, really strong producer.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not that obvious. It's not someone else coming to you and saying, you really should try this, or this is a skill that you have.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is that introspection and reflection that helps us to notice those. But
Mhm.
as you were saying, you need that time and you need space to explore skills that you may not notice yet, or areas of interest that you may not notice yet. So reading can be really helpful, listening to podcasts can be really helpful,
Yeah.
going to conferences and hearing about what's happening in the industry can be really helpful. But when you find that tiny crack open in a door, it's also okay to take a peek, and you don't have to
Yes.
walk through it fully. It's okay to just explore a little bit and check out what the other options might be before you commit to something. And that's also how we find ourselves in, unique, cool, different career paths that other people from the outside looking in say, how did Julia manage that? That is so cool and that's so amazing. How did that happen? Okay, hence this whole podcast concept that we're on right now. But having that desire to learn and that desire to keep improving and really practicing that skill, I think helps us to notice those doors as they open too.
Yeah. And I would say listen to the feedback that people give you. So if you're
Mm.
always hearing the same, like, hey, you're really good at, hey, you're really good at, like, take take notice of that, especially if it's a repeating thing. I would also say obviously filter those comments because sometimes it's, oh, you need to work on this. But actually that person's being critical and speaking out of their own self-doubt. So you will hear those comments too. But listen to it, filter it, and take note of it. Because if it's always the same compliments, that might be a skill that is really shining for you that you may have not realized.
Yeah.
Like I know there's been situations where I hear like, "Hey, your mix sounds really good. Hey, I really like your mix. Dude, that bass was awesome in your mix." And when I keep hearing that, I'm like, I think I'm a good mix engineer.
I think this is what everyone's telling me. The universe is trying to signal that this might be worth exploring.
But when you're hearing the same thing from different sources and different environments from different people who don't know each other, that's a pretty good indicator that you might shine in that area. And it's okay to be like,
Definitely.
I'm good at this. I'm a huge advocate of knowing what you're good at and not shying away from it. And not that you need to lead with, I'm really good at whatever, I'm good at this thing, but don't shy away from being like, yeah, I'm a mix engineer and I really enjoy it. And that's something that I'm good at. You don't have to be like, oh,
Absolutely.
well, I just kind of do this thing and I'm okay at it. No, if you're good at something, it's okay to be like, I'm good at this. Like I'm Kelly and I
Absolutely.
host an awesome podcast. I interview people and I make content for people and it's great content. Like that's not bragging, that's just truth telling. That's just being honest. And it's not
Well,
shying away from what you're good at.
and thank you. I appreciate the compliments and boost my confidence today too. But I also want to turn this back on you because this is
Yes.
how you have built your career. And so, okay, I kind of
Yeah.
hinted a second ago, you've done some really,
Mhm.
I mean, cool projects, I think, working with musicians and vocalists as
Yeah.
a producer and as a recording engineer. If someone is listening to this and they're thinking, God, that's a really cool area, and I think I might be interested in doing that, but I don't know how to, again, quote unquote, make it.
Yeah.
How do you come into a project? How do you meet someone or meet a team that you might be working with to produce a single or an album for someone?
Hmm. I think one is build up your skill set because you can't work on something if you don't know what you're doing. So
Mm.
build up your work set, understand how to use industry standard tools. If that's going to college, go to college. If that's doing a few YouTube courses, do the YouTube courses. Listen critically, take feedback, take criticism. I would say lead with humility, but exude confidence is something that I would really encourage. And then say yes confidently if it's something you want to do. I say I enjoy saying yes, but I'm comfortable saying no. And so when I'm invited into a project, I think about what does saying yes to this mean and then what does saying no to this mean? Because if you say yes to something, you say no to something by default, right? So, and I would say don't say yes to everything, but choose your yeses wisely and
Mm.
be willing to say yes. Think about it. And
Absolutely.
so, with the case of Jeremy, I know his manager or his previous manager at the time. And I got a text saying, like, hey, we're going to record his album. Do you want to come to the studio and hang? And I was like, that sounds fun. So I came to the studio and I had recently been in Nashville for the Women's Audio Conference. And I sat in on Simone Torres's vocal production class that she was doing. And Simone Torres is a rock star vocal producer. She has incredible credits, super talented. Yeah, I'm a fan of hers. She's super cool. Anyways, so I had just sat in on her class, and all this information is fresh in my mind. And I'm sitting at the desk, and I look at the manager, who's also the studio manager, and I was like, "Is there a template set up, or like how are we gonna record this?" Because I was just essentially there to hang and just chill, just like see what's up.
Observe.
And
Yeah.
yeah, just like hang. And he was like, no, I don't have a session pulled up. I was like, do you want me to build a template so that we can just like hit record and go? And they're like, sure, why not? Okay. So I built a template with all of this class information fresh in my mind from sitting in on Simone Torres's class. I build a template. Jeremy comes in and we just have a great vibe. Like we're pals. I was like, this dude is awesome. And it was great to work with Jeremy because he's super talented. So he was on American Idol a few years ago. And I think he's known as like J-Lo's favorite his season. And so like he's very, very talented, but also very kind and humble. And so I'm sitting at the desk and I actually have the opportunity to record on his album. And then on the talkback mic, I was like, hey, like let's try another take, but this time let's do this. And so I ended up vocal producing. And so after the session, like we become pals. Like we had a really great vibe. And he was very humble. And the thing about vocal producing is that it's your job to essentially get the best out of the singer. And as a singer myself, I know that my voice is one of the strongest assets I have. My voice is a tool that I use all day for my art, for communication, for public speaking. My voice is super important to me. And so when you are a singer and it is your job to sing, you have to be super choosy with who you trust with your voice. And so for me to say, hey, can we try it this way? And him to say yes is a huge point of trust. Because I've worked with vocal coaches before and I'm like, can I trust this person with my voice? If they ask me to try this vocal exercise, I have to know that they have my back and they're not going to ask me to do something that could damage my voice, my strongest instrument, like the thing I hold very dear. And so for him to trust me with his voice was a huge deal. And I also wasn't asking him to do anything crazy. Like we're not doing anything crazy. But
Nothing
still to say like, hey,
experimental.
let's try this. Right? Like let's add a yodel here. No, we're not doing that, you know? But for him to trust me with his voice was a big deal. And so after the project was recorded, they got back to me and his manager at the time was like, hey, do you want to mix one of the songs? And I was like, yeah. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I asked to mix Better Off as Friends, which is a total vibe. So I mixed that and did the vocal production and post on that one as well. And so what I realized in retrospect on that project was that the more they worked with me, the more trust they put in me, and the more they asked me to contribute to the project, which was a huge one boost of confidence, but also knowing that what I was doing was working and that I can continue to model my work ethic off of that experience. And so they released the project in like 2020 and I get a call 2021 and it's his then manager and he was like, "Hey, so Jeremy's on The Voice this year and he's on Kelly's team." I was like, "What?" And so he does well on The Voice. Like I get to watch his season. It was awesome. Super proud of him. And then I hear he signed to Capitol. And so like that's a big deal. Like and I knew that was something that he was like really excited about. Not every artist wants to sign to a record label, but he was very much going in that direction. So I was really proud of him. And so his win is my win because now I can say, "Oh, I've worked with like Jeremy Rosado from American Idol and from The Voice." And I have credits on his record. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so as you say yes to things and as you build trust with people, you will get opportunities. And so it's not just about making it, it's about working hard and establishing yourself as someone who's trustworthy, someone who's going to put in the time, and someone who's going to be kind and compassionate, but also a strong worker, because you have to do both to be successful in anything you want to do.
Definitely. And being in the room, I think, is half the
Mm-hmm.
battle. And
Yeah.
this, we talked earlier about looking around at the demographics at NAM, and women are fewer and further between. So I think it's also a little bit harder for us
Yeah.
to get in the room. Like point blank, it's just a numbers game,
Sure.
and that's a little bit more challenging. But when you are there, making the most of it, introducing yourself to as many people as you possibly can, exchanging
Yeah.
business cards, building relationships and friendships, all those networking pieces that you had talked about earlier lead to these doors being open. They lead to be invited to just come hang at the studio by a manager, because those are people that you've put the work in to establish the relationship in the first place, and then you can build trust. So it's not just,
Yeah.
you know, it's not just doing really, really quality work. If no one knows you, that work is still going to be private, right? So there's a combination here. Now we have a really
Mm-hmm.
great platform in this day and age through social media to be talking about and sharing
Yeah.
what we're working on, and showcasing things a little bit more. It's also complicated because posting on social media can feel scary. Sharing your works in progress can feel a little intimidating. So
Sure.
as you're balancing all this and trying to do the networking and trying to find the right people and find these opportunities and find the right yeses for you, what are some tools that you use not only to meet people, but then also to stay in contact, let them know what you're up to, so that you stay top of mind to get those calls for other projects?
Yeah. Um, I do think social media is a great tool, but I think also just being visible around your community is a great one as well. And so in my community, I'm not shy that I'm a recording engineer and that I am a producer. And so when there's a new artist that I meet, they're like, "Hey, I listened to your stuff and I'm interested in working with you." Cool. Then we set up a meeting and we talk, right? And so being visible in your community, I think, is a really big thing. But I would also say lead with your strengths. So for me, that's being very extroverted and people oriented. I love being around people. I love talking with people. I love talking about music and hearing what people are listening to and things that I should check out. I love that. But for some people, it might be putting on their turn on your phone camera. And I heard this in one of your podcasts, actually, turn on your phone camera and just practice rehearsal. That
Yeah.
might be a better way for you to showcase what you're great at instead of being so visible in person. And then through that, build a confidence so that when you do meet these people that you want to work with, you can say, "Hey, check out all of these things that I've worked on." Do you have all of these things that you need to have? Like, do you have your website? Do you have your social media? Do you have um, everything that you need to ready to go? And so doing all the prep work is important, but also lead with your strengths and then build your weaknesses. I think it was
Definitely.
Linnell Grant that said something to the extent in lean into your frustrations, like the natural frustrations, because those are things that you can better and those weaknesses can become strengths. Something to that extent. And that was so powerful because there are always things in what we do that are hard. And like, oh, this is just like that, I have to thing, a part of your job. But if you lean into that natural frustration, like she was saying, you can actually build it. And it might not feel as cringy later on as it does now. And you can become better at it. And I was just like,
Absolutely.
what a beautiful thing to say. Not just like, if you don't like it, too bad. Because you hear that. But you don't hear lean into
Yeah.
that and work on it. Apply yourself to it. Get better at it. It's okay if you're not great at it now. But in 10 years, do you still want to be where you are now? Probably not. Get better at it. Work hard. So, yeah.
And going back to the tolerance thing too, this always takes practice.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
just building up your strengths, of course, too, but also identifying the strengths and building that little internal muscle that we all need to have, that
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit more um I don't want to use the word critical, but I do think that maybe is the best word that applies here, that we need to be
Mm-hmm.
looking at ourselves almost in a as unbiased as possible and say, what do I like?
Right.
What do I not like about what I'm working on right now? But also, what am I good at? And I'm getting outside affirmation that I'm good at. And what are some areas that, even if I feel like I'm really good at it, I haven't gotten that outside affirmation yet? Where can I get more feedback? Where can I learn more about this? Where can I keep improving? And it does take repetition and work to build up that self-awareness overall,
Right.
so that we can be excited for the wins that we have and proud of the accomplishments that we're making, but then also keeping an eye on the things that we want to keep improving and finding the opportunities and the mentors to help us make that happen.
Absolutely. And within that community I was referring to, you will meet peers and then potential mentors. And within that, even peer to peer, when you've met other people who are interested in what you're interested in, you can always say, "Hey, I'm working on this track. I'd love your feedback. Would you mind just taking a minute and listening to it and letting me know what you think?" Cool. Like, I know I've done that in the past. I've had people email me saying like, "Hey, would you mind listening to which song do you think I should choose as my single?" Cool. And it's like, I'll take 10 minutes, 15 minutes and help a friend out. Like,
Yeah.
that's most people are probably willing to do that for you. And then when you're taking their feedback, think, "Okay, yes, I can agree with this. Yes, I can agree with this. This comment is more subjective and I actually like what I've done and I'm going to choose to leave what I've done." So you don't take every bit of criticism and adjust towards it. You
Mm-hmm.
take every bit of criticism and you filter it through what you know is true and what you know you need to improve on and things that you know about what you're working on. And I think that's really important, is being able to sift through criticism. And sometimes you'll hear criticism and you're like, "That's true. I need to work on this. I can be better at that." That's true. You'll hear things and say, "I haven't thought about that. I'm going to sit on that and really think about it. I
Yeah.
maybe can improve on that, but I'm going to think about it before I change how I'm working on something." And then after thinking about it for a minute, you might say, "Oh, actually, I agree with what they said. I can get better at this. This is probably a working area for me." Or you might say, "Actually, I've done quite a bit of work on that already, and I'm really happy with where it is. And I'm going to choose to not take that advice, but appreciate their willingness to give it to me."
Mm-hmm.
Which takes humility to say, "Hey, I need to work on this." But it also takes courage to stick to what you know you like and what you don't like. And that's okay. You might like something subjective
Definitely.
that they don't. And there's nothing wrong with a difference of opinion. You don't have to agree with your colleagues on everything. That would just be unreasonable.
Well, and it's everyone has different music preferences, everyone has different
Sure.
individual preferences, and it's really common for people in again in the music industry in general to feel like a lot of that criticism is personal, and it can be very emotional to receive criticism or to receive feedback, and it feels like it's a direct reflection of you as a person, especially talking about singing. It's your physical body,
Right.
it's your voice. If we're thinking about production and engineering, these are choices that you're making and preferences that you have, and
Hmm.
experimentation that you want to do to get the mix just right. Those preferences may not be everyone's cup of tea, and that's totally fine. And it's also okay to be really specific about your preferences and about your style, because the more specific you are, the more you will attract people who have those same
Yeah.
preferences and like what you bring to the
Yeah.
table. So you have to be really confident in those things and also know what criticism is like. Yes, I hear what they're saying, and that is their style preference. It's just not mine. That's
Yeah.
also okay.
I do think that, and I mentioned this in the panel as well, that
Mhm.
you are not your job title. So if I receive criticism on something I work on, I am not receiving criticism on who I am, because I am not the song I work on. I am not, my credit roster. I am Julia, right? And so if I go through an area that I need to work on, I can refine an area of my life without having to be like, "I am this thing," because
Mhm.
my value and my worth is not contingent upon like the projects I work on. Because if I were to switch careers today, my value would remain the same. My worth would remain the same. I would just be doing something else and functioning in this world differently. And I think, especially in the music industry, we forget that. We think, oh, well, I worked with this person, so now I'm here. But if I work with this person, I'll be here. And if I get to do this thing, then I'll be here. And then I'll be at this other person's level. That is a toxic way of thinking. And I don't know if it's what we're taught or what we just think initially, but it's backwards because you are here and you can do things for career satisfaction and you can do things out of like personal motivation and just passion. That's awesome and go for it. But don't misinterpret what you do for who you are, because what happens when you get laid off? What happens when you don't have too many clients? What happens if you lose an ability? Like what happens if you lose your voice?
Mm-hmm.
Are you all of the sudden worthless because you don't have that same tool anymore? Absolutely not. Like your value is not contingent upon what you do. And that's something that I'm really passionate about sharing, because I feel like, especially to the women in the industry, when there's very, very few and there's many more men in the industry, like we need to encourage each other that it's not like you versus me, it's you and me. And your success is my success. And we come into this room with value and purpose and dignity, and we leave the same way. And so I think it's important to remind each other of that and to especially tell students, regardless of what jobs you do get, what jobs you don't get, the people you get to work with, the people who choose not to work with you, your value is the same. You are still important. You are still enough as a human. And it's okay if doors are closed to you or if they're open to you. You are important nonetheless.
I love everything that you just said. I wish I could, like, ditto. Yes, absolutely. Especially lifting each other up. There really isn't competition here. And I know that maybe
Mm-mm.
when we're kids or there's like limited opportunities in front of you, it feels like there's competition. There's one principal flute, there's one principal clarinet, there's one concertmaster for the entire orchestra. It feels like it's very, very limited. But you get out into the rest of the world and it's this gigantic, wide open field of possibility, and you have so many directions that you can run. Instead of trying to be all things to all people, or always being the exact right fit for every single opportunity, find that identity in yourself and find that value in yourself, and then find the opportunities that align with that instead of the other way
Mhm.
around and trying to change who you are for every single situation. I say this like it's
Right.
easy. Again, this also takes practice. This is something that I will happily admit that I'm working on right now, is making sure that you are you in every situation and not trying to just match the energy or the criteria for any given opportunity, event, person, um, whatever that feedback might look like.
Mhm.
Not that it's not good to match the energy when you walk into a room and try to take a little bit of that on, but it does get complicated when you lose sight of yourself as a result of you're compromising your values or compromising your own musical style and professional ethics and morals because you're trying to fit a situation. So knowing who you are, knowing where you would potentially like to go, can really help to open the right doors, not just any door.
Right. And I think it's important to know who you are and know who you want to work with, and not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
like specific names, but I want to work with people who are trustworthy, people who've proven themselves kind and compassionate, people who say what they do and do what they say, and people that are genuine. For me, those are people I want to work with.
Yeah.
And so when I am working on a project, I don't need to think, okay, well, what is it I need to do? What is it I don't need to say? Like, how do I need to, I don't have to do that, because I've chosen to work with people who are genuine people, which give me the freedom and the confidence to know I'm just going to be myself. And so, especially for internships, you may not have the opportunity to choose every single person you work with, but I would strongly encourage you to operate as if you did. If you're being
Mm.
talked to in a way that you aren't comfortable with, you can be genuine, say like, please don't talk to me that way. I don't appreciate that language. Is that rude? No. Like you might be surprised that person might be like, oh, what did I said? Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry. They might just apologize. They might not. But I would say just be genuine in who you are and be self-aware. You may be working in an environment where it's not okay to talk very much, and your role needs to be more quiet. And that's okay if that's the place that you want to be. If you're sitting in on a session in the studio, you shouldn't be talking. Your job is to serve the artist. And so most of the time that means you're quiet, you're listening for the artist, and you're being attentive to what it is that they need. Do they need water? Maybe you can go grab them water. Do they need tea? How is the engineer doing? And it doesn't mean you're like, "Oh, do you need this? Oh, do you need that?" Like you're observing. You're using your eyes. Like you're not talking. If maybe you're in another session or another situation and you do need to be speaking. Okay, we'll be attentive to the person you're speaking with. Like, are they nervous? Are they uncomfortable? Maybe they are having a hard day, and you can just speak some kindness and compassionate to them and make them feel more kind. So you're leading with empathy and confidence at the same time while being self-aware. And so I think when you go into a situation thinking about the other person first, that will set you up for success. Not to the extent of, sacrificing your health or your morals or anything like that. You're just thinking,
Right.
what is it the other person that I'm working with needs? And then what is it that I can do to make their life better? And that is really just teamwork in general, because a good team does that for one another, right? So like it goes both ways.
Absolutely.
But especially when
you,
you're early on in your career, you want to be
yeah.
attentive to what other people need and prove that you should be in that room and that they want you in that room and that you are going to make their lives better by being in that room because you're kind, you're empathetic, and you say what you do and you do what you say. You live it out.
And when you're helpful like that, not only does it help advance your career, and there's all these, not that we're doing everything with an ulterior motive, but obviously
Yeah.
if you're being helpful and genuine in an environment, it's going to come back. But also that energy that you're putting out into the world and putting out into the industry, it's not just going to come back in that exact situation that you were more pleasant to work with and people enjoyed it, but more opportunities will come forward and more doors will open because you're leading with being a genuine, kind human instead of just trying to lead
Yeah.
with whatever that competition is or trying to get to the next level. We've covered a lot of ground. We've touched on a lot of different things today. So maybe if we could summarize for someone who is trying to start their career, maybe they just graduated or they're making their first kind of moves towards their initial career goals. What would be your one big final piece of advice that you'd want to impart on them and those first steps that they should be taking in their career?
Yeah. One of them I would say would be leading with humility and confidence. That's something that I would say. Know that there's a lot you can learn, but understand there are things that you excel in, that you can showcase, and that you can offer to the industry. And don't shy away from that, but obviously lead with humility, with confidence. And then the other is something that I'm also very passionate about, which is understand the difference between perfectionism and excellence. And I think oftentimes when we're working on a project, it's easy to go into this perfectionist mindset and think, what is perfect and everything else is awful. But actually, what we should be thinking through is what is excellent? What is great? What is well done? And I think even in practicing a song for a live show, right? You're not thinking, what is perfect? Because is there such a thing as perfect? Can we achieve perfection? As imperfect people, can we achieve perfection? Let's think through that. Probably not, right? But as imperfect people, can we achieve excellence? Yes, we can. We can critically think about something and say, what are areas that need to be worked on in this piece? And what are areas that we can say are strong? And then that allows opportunity for growth. So when you release a song, for example, you don't release it until it's excellent. You make sure that you're following your timelines and all of that and working with your team, but you release it when it's excellent. If you wait to release it to when it's perfect, it will never be released. And then even in this is excellent, but this can still get better. Like if you're in school and you get an A+ paper, does that mean that your paper is perfect? It has no room for improvement? It's completely flawless? No. But it's an A+ paper. That means it's excellent. It's well done. But you can still get better. So I think that is something that I've been taking into my own work, is understanding what is excellent and what needs to be improved instead of thinking, is this perfect? Because that mindset is very damaging, especially to very creative people, because you want to put out quality work. But you have to understand the difference between something that is not ready and something that is well done and excellent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as creatives, when we're trying to separate criticism of our work from our personal selves and everything else that we've talked about today, too, having those boundaries and setting essentially a rubric for yourself and having these guideposts means that you don't feel as though it's so tied to who you are and how you define yourself, too. So
Right.
that's awesome. Julia, this has
Yeah.
been so much fun, and you've shared so much insight and wonderful examples from your own career journey. I really appreciate your time and your energy in this episode, because I know we dumped out a lot of really, really important things, and I hope
Mhm.
obviously for everyone listening there was at least more than one thing. I'm sure there was several, but at least something that you could really hold on to and take and apply to your own journey wherever you're at. Julia, thank you again. It was wonderful getting to know you more and chatting through this, and I really, really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Kelly. I am such a fan of you and what you're doing. And thank you for making content for people and being a resource. That is huge. We need positive resources like you and your podcast in this industry. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.